Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we are talking contracts in today's webinar. Sorry, had a little glitch in the matrix for a second. So, welcome, everybody. And I hope you're having a great day. Hope your Thursday is going well. Getting ready to have a lovely weekend. Anybody have any good, interesting plans for the weekend? It's kind of like summer's end. So I don't know if there's good weather where you're at, but if there is, try and get out and enjoy it. And so, contracts. Looks like we got some studying going on. That is awesome. Lots of people doing some studying. Me too. I've been doing a lot of studying this week, so I feel y'all. It is a lot of work to sort of retain all this information, right? And to wrap your head around all these concepts. Real estate is kind of an interesting topic because there's a lot of sort of economics that are involved. There's a lot of like legal concepts, which is where contracts really come into play, very law based. And studying this stuff can take a while, but once it starts to click, a lot of it starts to click. So, my advice to you all would be to keep at it and to keep working on the fundamentals. I was talking to somebody a little bit earlier today, and a good analogy that we came up with was that vocabulary is sort of the foundation of your house that is getting your real estate license. And Joe's videos and these webinars and the audio lessons help you build the concepts, which are like the framework, right? And then taking the practice exams really sort of buttons everything together, and that's like your roof and drywall. Sounded a lot better the first time through. I can't really link that back to a real estate license that good right now, but I can see that a lot of y'all are in agreement. Although somebody's going to be partying. 16th birthday party this Saturday. Happy birthday to your daughter, Marisa. Good luck, Tyler. I'm glad that tonight's topic works for you, so let's go ahead and launch in. We need to get Tyler prepared for the test tomorrow. So when we're talking contracts, there are some essentials that we talk about, 4 of them. Can anybody tell me what those are? What the 4 essentials of a valid contract are? Let's start there. 4 essentials of a valid contract. What does everybody think? 4 essentials of a valid contract. Rachel says mutual consent, lawful object, capable parties, and consideration. That's exactly how I have it in my notes. Perfect, Rachel. Thank you very much. Natalie's there too. Roro agrees. All right. And then we also have sort of 4 different classifications of contracts as well. And I'm not really thinking of the best way to say it, but they're right here on the board. They're going to be part of the first one. So within our valid, so we've got our valid contract, right? That was the 4 essentials we just talked about. We've also got void, enforceable, and unenforceable. So can anybody tell me what a void contract is? What is a void contract? What makes a contract void? And how I like to think of this is that the contract is void from the outset, right? In relation to whether or not a contract is valid, is ... And Inez says missing one of the 4 components. Exactly, you're missing one of those 4 essentials that we just talked about. That is a void contract. What about unenforceable? What is an unenforceable contract? What's different there? What is different with an unenforceable contract? And this one's kind of tricky. throws a lot of people for a loop. And maybe that's why the board isn't exactly filling up yet. But some people are throwing up some examples, not in writing, if there is duress, when a person is threatened. Somebody says not legal. If it's not legal, then actually you're missing one of the 4 essentials, right? Lawful object is one of our 4 essentials. So if you're missing that, your contract is actually going to be void. But basically, the way that I try and remember it is that it has the 4 essentials, but it's missing another element, or it's like sort of stepping on another element. So maybe there's a statute of limitations that affects the contract. It would have been enforceable at one time, but it's no longer enforceable. Minors are, minors are not. Minors are voidable, which isn't up here on the board. But statute of frauds can be another reason that a contract is unenforceable. Public policy conflicting with a contract. So it's not illegal, but it conflicts with what's legal in your area or your state. And then an enforceable contract. What does everybody say about an enforceable contract? How would you define an enforceable contract? What do you all think? This one's a little bit of a trick question too. Jelly says, Julie, not Jelly, Julie McHugh says it has all the elements, exactly. So an enforceable contract and a valid contract are pretty much the same thing conceptually. Make sense? All right, we're going to do a little bit of sort of Latin, I guess, a little bit of contract vocabulary, and then we will jump into the questions on the board. So novation. Can anybody tell me what a novation is? And it looks like you guys legal on the face. It's met all 4 elements. Looks like you guys have a really good grasp of what an enforceable contract is. So novation is new. Some of you are saying new contract. It can also be a new clause in a contract. It can be probably a new element in a contract is a good way to think of it. Novation is Latin for new, as Alessandra says. Nova equals new. Novation is a new contract or a new party in a contract, or you're sort of putting a new clause in. It's a little bit different than an addendum, which is an addition to an existing part. Novation is new, Latin for new. So anything it refers to is going to be a new piece of that contract. All right, what about a codicil? Does anybody know what a codicil is? I wish they would have offered Latin in my high school. I would be so on top of all of this stuff. Welcome, Rachel Ford. No problem that you're late. Sorry we started without you, but everybody was getting antsy. So an addition to a will, a codicil, or an addendum to a will like we were just talking about. Or an amendment, like Text Jim says. That is also a codicil. And I believe you can also subtract under what's called a codicil as well. But all of that is in reference to a will, not just any contract, right? A codicil is an addendum to a will. Malou asks, how do you spell that? I just type that in. And what about a counteroffer? That's something that we encounter a lot when we're talking contracts. What is a counteroffer? And here we're looking for the sort of memory technique that Joe gives, or a more in-depth explanation if you feel. A brand new offer, or a new offer, a rejected offer, new contract, all of those are part of a counter offer. So Joe likes to say the offeree becomes the offeror. And the common example is if a buyer offers or makes an offer, excuse me, if a buyer makes an offer on a home and then the seller counters with a new offer. So, what happens to the buyer's original offer? What happens to the buyer's original offer when a seller submits a counter offer? Oh, Rachel hints at it right here. It is not an adjustment to an offer. Malou says, Adrian, this review you're doing is very helpful. Thank you, Malou. I am trying to take some pages out of Joe's book, and Joe's been doing a lot of sort of conceptual review and history lessons at the begin, and I'm a big fan of it too. So I spent a little more time prepping so that we could do this today. So I'm glad you appreciate it. And everybody says that the purchaser's original offer is void. It's canceled, it's terminated, right? It is done. And that's the important thing to know about a counteroffer. It doesn't modify an offer, it cancels and replaces an offer. And finally, the last vocabulary review we're going to do for contracts is liquidated damages. What can anybody say about liquidated damages? This one throws a lot of people for a loop. And if you don't have some like legal background, or if you haven't been studying for a while, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Inez has hit the nail on the head the closest. Provision in a contract, it is definitely that. What does that provision say? Some of you are talking more about specific performance. And if you have liquidated damages, if you have a liquidated damages contract, you're probably not going to be in a lawsuit. Why is that? Because if you have a liquidated damages clause in your contract, it basically means that you and the person that you're in a contract with, so let's say Tyler and Roro are entering into a purchase agreement for a house, and Tyler is the seller, and he says, I really need this deal to go through. I'm going to give you a special price on this, Ro, but if you don't come through, then I want you to sign this liquidated damages clause that says you're going to owe me $4,500 for the time I lost for 2 months worth of whatever money that I could have made. And if Roro says, okay, I agree, that sounds good, you have a liquidated damages clause. That's all that a liquidated damages clause is. It predefines what specific damages could be if somebody doesn't perform on the contract. Roro says, broke. Oops, you're out of luck, Tyler. Sorry about that. Try and pick somebody with some funds next time. But Tyler points out it's when the contract is breached. That's what triggers the liquidated damages clause. Make sense to everybody? So it's a clause. Ashley says, exactly. It is a clause in a contract. And I'm not sure that they're used that much in the type of situation we just talked about, but that's one that we can all understand. And what you need to know for your exam is just how a liquidated damages clause works. So if you see just liquidated damages, those are the award of the clause, right? That's the $4,500 that Roro is going to have to do a payday loan on to pay Tyler back if she doesn't perform. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the questions on the board. Everybody ready? Let's go. A buyer enters into a verbal contract to purchase a house and immediately gives the broker an earnest money check for $500. Prior to performance under this contract, the verbal contract is considered legally A, enforceable, B, valid, C, void, or D, unenforceable. Just spent some time talking about this, so hopefully we're all on top of it. But don't feel bad if not, we'll cover it more. Tex asks if it's in the vocabulary list. I'm not 100% positive, Tex, but if you do us a favor, I don't want to check it out right now, but if you can send us an email using the contact form from your account, if it's not in the list, I will get that added for you. All right. Liquidated damages is not something that comes up too much with real estate. To my knowledge anyway, but it is something that can come up. So we definitely want you to know it. All right, a buyer enters into a verbal contract to purchase a house and immediately gives the broker an earnest money check for $500. Prior to performance under this contract, the verbal contract is considered legally unenforceable. And Inez says statute of frauds must be in writing. Exactly. So it's considered unenforceable because it has all of the elements, but the statute of frauds is in the way. It's an element, an external element that makes the contract unenforceable. Make sense? We all got that? We look good. All right, let's move along. The buyer gives the owner a $2,500 payment and a written agreement stating that on June 1st of the following year, the buyer will purchase the property for $475,000 cash, or the owner may keep the money. This transaction is known as A, a lease with an option to purchase, B, an option agreement, C, a limited partnership, or D, a purchase contract with a delayed settlement. What does everybody think here? A little bit of a story problem. And we're not entirely sure, so we'll go into it for just a minute. The buyer gives the owner a $2,500 payment and a written agreement stating that on June 1st of the following year, the buyer will purchase the property for $475,000, or the owner may keep the money. This transaction is known as B, an option agreement. And I can see that some of the confusion is that there is option up here as well. And I think what the problems with this question come down to are just parsing the relevant information, right? So we are talking about a property purchase that automatically strikes out lease with an option. The purchase the property doesn't strike out the lease with the option. What strikes that out is the fact that it's a buyer giving a payment and a written agreement stating that on June 1st, the buyer will purchase the property. So that's what tells you it's not a lease. Limited partnership, that's more of a business, like the type of business like an LLC, right? And then a purchase contract with a delayed settlement is like a completely different type of agreement. That would be like a personal agreement, but it's not an option to buy. What makes this an option agreement is that one party is giving the other party actual money. So, like, this is not even consideration, it's straight up performance, right? You're not just promising to give somebody money once they do something, you're giving them money of some sort or something of value in order to keep open your option to purchase the property later. Does that make sense? Looks like a lot of you feel it was more just about reading the question more thoroughly. So this is just a good reminder, especially for those of you taking the exam soon, that especially on the exam, you want to take that time, right? Make sure that you're understanding the question that's asked, because a lot of states will still try and throw little tricky languages at you. And some states will straight up try and deceive you. All right. Which of the following is created when possession and title do not occur at the same time? Is that an estate at sufferance, B, a writ of execution, C, an interim occupancy agreement, or D, a subordination clause? Roro says, like New York. Yep, I've heard that a couple of states in that area make. Um, I'm not going to call out which state, but I've heard another state that has pretty standard, like 8-line story problems as well. And a lot of those states, like if your state writes their own questions, they don't hire PSI or AMP from the stuff that I've seen and the interaction and feedback that you all give me. If your state writes their own questions, they might be more difficult than the average state. All right. Which of the following is created when possession and title do not occur at the same time? We're talking an interim occupancy agreement. And it looks like we were all pretty solid with that one. But interim occupancy, that's sort of Latin/English again. Interim is very similar to intermediate or in the middle. And so if possession and title are separated by time, that's the only one that really makes sense, right? And Diana asks, why is that? Why will a state try and deceive a person? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that, Diana. I spent some time in the military, and the reason that they would do that sort of thing from the governmental perspective is that they're testing your attention to detail. How closely are you paying attention? And so I think there are some states that really want you to know their material really, really well. And so that's why. But there are others that I think just use it as sort of a weeding out process. It's just like, well, we're going to make this as difficult as possible to make it, to limit the number of licensees that we actually get. So, and that's hearsay. That's just my personal take on things, so don't quote me on any of that. But I am pretty sure about the attention to detail thing for a lot of places, and you guys are fiduciaries, or you're going to be fiduciaries for people, and it's important that you have that attention to detail and you're taking care of people's large sums of money. And you're going to be dealing with huge, huge transactions, right? The largest purchase that most people make in their lifetime. Rachel says Darwinism, sort of like natural selection. All right, let's see where we're at. We're going to skip that. We've talked a lot of statute of frauds today. We've talked this too, but we're going to test your attention to detail. Which of the following would terminate an original offer? A, acceptance. B, all of the other options are correct. C, a counteroffer. Or D, a forfeiture clause. Congratulations, Fajan Sahi, for just passing your test. That's awesome. And you're welcome. I'm glad we were able to help. That's what we're here for. Trying to get all of you back in this chat just to let us know that you killed it. All right, which of the following terminates an original offer? C, a counter offer. So a little bit of confusion here. Acceptance doesn't terminate an original offer, it performs an original offer. So after you have acceptance, it doesn't perform the offer, it creates a binding contract. Acceptance does, right? So you have a binding contract with acceptance. It does not terminate the original offer. And a forfeiture clause is something completely different that's not actually used very often, Inez. A forfeiture clause basically says, it's kind of like liquidated damages conceptually. It basically says that if you don't perform on this contract, then you forfeit your Sony Walkman to me. Or most of you probably don't know what a Sony Walkman is. Sorry, you forfeit your iPhone to me. And I'm not sure why. I just did a little bit of research on this so I would know what it was myself, but it doesn't seem to be used very often. So, and I haven't seen it come up as something you need to know for real estate. Fair enough? All right. Roro says 80s much? Yeah, maybe. Usually when Joe and I talk, that's where a lot of our references are. which probably dates us, but I'm going to let you do the math yourself. All right, so let's take it basic, and then because we haven't gotten through all the questions, I'm going to jump into some of the more difficult ones I picked out for today. But this is one that does confuse some people. The basic purpose of a listing agreement is to authorize the broker to A, negotiate the contract, B, sell the house, C, find a buyer, or D, market the house. Hey, so I see a lot more of you know what a Walkman is than I thought. Love it. They revolutionized life. Headphones. Life before headphones was so social. I don't know, it was weird. People don't understand today. So the basic purpose of a listing agreement is to authorize the broker to find a buyer. And I see that most of you are on your attention to detail. But a lot of people will confuse this with selling the house because the ultimate goal is to sell the house. But your employment contract is not to sell the house. And ultimately, if you're an agent, you don't get to choose to, like who you're selling the house to. You can find, all you can do is find the right buyer that pleases the seller, right? Jim says Sony is putting out an anniversary Walkman. That is awesome. All right, back on topic. Filth LLC says, not your house to sell. Exactly. That's exactly how Joe represents it. That is why you are contracted to find a buyer, because it is not your house to sell. So we talked about this a little bit earlier as well. The buyer has been held to be in default on a contract of sale. If buyer and seller had not agreed on liquidated damages, the seller could do which of the following? A, arrange for criminal proceedings against the buyer. B, obtain a court order preventing the buyer from purchasing another property. C, require the buyer to find a substitute purchaser. Or D, sue the buyer for compensatory damages. What does everybody think here? As Angela says, Walkman and Discman, thought they were the same. They actually had cassette tape Walkmans before the Discman, Rosangela. Rachel Ford used to record off the radio like that, making mixtapes from the radio. Back when a cassette was like $10. All right, too much old person, get off my lawn talk. The buyer has been held to be in default on a contract of sale. If buyer and seller had not agreed on liquidated damages, the seller could do which of the following? D, sue the buyer for compensatory damages. And I want to commend everybody on getting that right, paying attention earlier. And this question wasn't even about that. It was just about the concept. But because you all know what liquidated damages are and what they do for you, you know what you can do if that clause isn't there. Well played. Right. This one too, conceptually, this confuses a lot of people. A parcel of vacant land is listed for $100,000, requiring 20% down with the seller to carry back the balance. The broker brings in a full price cash offer, but the owner refuses. The broker is entitled to A, the full commission, B, a commission as a percent of the down payment, C, half of the commission, or D, nothing. What does everybody think? Rachel Ford says, I'm not old. Me either, Rachel. That's what's so annoying about the whole thing. We're not old. Remembering the 80s does not make you old, because every decade is like 30 is the new 40 and 20 is the new 60, and technology. All right. And a little bit of confusion here, which is great, because I want to get into this one. A parcel of vacant land is listed for $100,000, requiring 20% down with the seller to carry back the balance. The broker brings in a full price cash offer, but the owner refuses. The broker is entitled to D nothing. So, what's confusing about this for a lot of people is that there's this sort of like urban knowledge understanding about how commissions work, and that, you know, because your job is to find a buyer, that if you find a buyer that meets all the specifications the seller lays out and they say no, well, you did your job. But as we talked about earlier, the house isn't yours to sell, right? So unless it's for obviously discriminatory reasons, you really have no recourse if the seller says, no, doesn't meet my standards, keep looking. So you're going to get nothing. This question, however, is a lot more cut and dry than that, even because in this question, the buyer that was brought in did not meet the listing requirements. So the land is listed for $100,000, requiring 20% down with the seller to carry back the balance. Can anybody tell me why a seller would prefer that to a full price cash offer? Any ideas? Anybody know why somebody would rather carry the loan themselves than take a full price cash offer for exactly $100,000? Susan hits it straight on the head. Interest rate. So if you're a seller carrying the loan, you're charging interest just like a lender would. A lot of times that's why a seller will carry a loan because, and well, scratch that, maybe not a lot of times, but there are times when a seller will carry a loan because the interest rates being offered by lenders are too high. That's not a problem that we've had for a long time, right? But if the interest rate gets up around like 8, 9, or 10%, and you own a piece of property and you've got like $500,000 in the bank and you want $100,000 for the property, you finance that, you get the interest, right? Makes sense? They get more money. It's all about the more money. Some people said tax purposes. I suppose in the immediate, for tax purposes. No, I'm not sure how that really benefits the seller. Maybe. So I'll look into that. It may benefit the seller a bit to just have to pay the upfront taxes, or excuse me, to not have to pay the upfront taxes. You know, if you bring in a full cash offer, you're going to have to pay your taxes on that 100,000 upfront. But I don't know enough about that to comment, so we're going to move on. We sort of covered this concept earlier as well. If a principal no longer desires the broker to act for him during the period of an exclusive right to sell listing, he may A. be forced to sell his property, B. revoke the agency created by the listing contract, C. revoke the agency created by the listing contract but may be liable for damages, or D. not revoke the agency because an exclusive right to sell listing is an irrevocable contract. Rachel says, in a webinar, you feel rushed to answer the question. Rachel, don't sweat that at all. There is absolutely no reason you feel rushed. The only reason that we really will, or that I in particular, I'm not sure Joe even does this, the only reason I call out like sometimes the people who throw out an answer first is that competitive thing is fuel for some people. For others, it is daunting. You know, it makes it more stressful and anxious, and that's absolutely not our point. Love you to participate, love to see your answers up there, but do it at your own time. Like, I don't care if your answer comes when I'm in the next question. If you think about it like you're going to need to do on the exam, I try and give you enough time in between questions, you know, like at least a couple minutes to answer before we move on. But don't sweat it. It's not a competition in here, like Rachel Hahn just said. We're all here for the same reason, like Ro just called out. Exactly. We're all here to get each other past the exam. And everybody's different. Everybody's going to have their own way of learning. So you just do what you got to do. All right, back to the question on the board. And it looks like we got a lot of right answers. If a principal no longer desires the broker to act for him during the period of an exclusive right to sell listing, he may C. Revoke the agency created by the listing contract, but may be liable for damages. And really, this is a trick question because you can't revoke a bilateral contract. Exclusive right to sell listing is a bilateral contract. One party to a bilateral contract can't just decide to cancel it. But the most correct answer is this here. Makes sense. All right. So before we call it for today, I do want to make a special announcement, but also a quiet announcement, because there are some people here who have asked about this before. And so next Thursday in this same time slot, I am going to be doing our first math webinar. And the reason that I say it's a quiet announcement is because this is a beta test for this math webinar. I've poured a lot of time into it and a lot of effort, but I have no idea if it's going to be clear to people who haven't spent a lot of time thinking about math. So I would like everybody who's interested to be there. But also, I'll be honest, I would like to keep the crowd as small as possible. So love you regulars and anybody who's here today. Obviously, we had a great crowd today. And I always love that. But also, if you would not throw it all over the Facebook group or anything just yet, because I want to see how it goes. And we want to fine tune it and make it like a really good product. So you guys are going to be helping me out by testing this thing. So that being said, I love to see the response that we had to that. Those of you who have followed for a while know that it's taken me a couple months to get this together. So I am really, really excited. Can't wait to see you all there. Rachel says, trial and error. A little bit, Rachel. I didn't completely wing it. Yes, it could be great or it could be a flop. Thank you. I wasn't trying to be that straightforward about it, but since you said it, exactly. It could be great or it may confuse some people, and that's what we're looking to avoid. So anyway, it is going to be on the schedule tomorrow, so you'll get email notification about that as well. But just wanted to let you guys know that we're always listening because people have been asking about this for so long is why we chose to take time out of all the other things that we're doing to put this together for you. And I did my best to try and make the concepts as easy as possible to understand. So in particular, we'll be talking about how percentages work, how fractions work, how equations work, and then how that relates to some common real estate problems. All right? Tyler says, thank you so much. Feeling better about contracts after this session. I'm really glad, Tyler. Really appreciate that as well. And that's going to do it for today, everybody. So appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your day. And we will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. And we are doing, what are we doing? Tomorrow's going to be valuation and market analysis. That is Joe's second favorite topic. All right. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. Ciao.